The wind rolled in across the high plains like a slow exhale from the earth, bending the grasses and brushing the hills with dusk. The sky was the color of bruised copper, thick with clouds that whispered rain. And down the long ribbon of dirt road, barely more than a deer trail, came a figure on horseback cloaked in a threadbare blanket and a silence that seemed older than the land itself. Thatcher Boone saw her before she reached the porch. He was oiling the saddle by the lamplight, the barn door yawning open to the chill. When he heard the hooves, soft, tentative, he stood, heart clenching as if stirred by a name he couldn't recall. He squinted through the curtain of mist, and there she was. She didn't speak right away. Just dismounted, her body folding like the end of a long sentence. The mare behind her gave a snort, steam rising from its nostrils. She stepped onto the porch like a ghost trying not to wake the living. Then, as thunder murmured somewhere distant, she lifted her chin and knocked. What? Twice. Her eyes met his when he opened the door, dark as wet soil, wide but unafraid. Rain streaked down her cheeks, but she didn't flinch. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. Can I stay here for tonight? For a moment the world stopped spinning. Thatcher didn't answer. Instead he knelt, not in worship, not even in courtesy, but something stranger. A memory, perhaps, of grace or guilt. He reached for the edge of her blanket, not to remove it, just to see if she was real. Her boots were worn, cracked at the soles. Her braids were loose, wind-whipped. There was mud on her hem and a quiet sorrow that clung to her like smoke. She didn't step inside. Not yet. Inside the cabin, the hearth still held some heat. He stirred it gently, added 2 logs. She moved with care, scanning the room without touching anything. Her eyes lingered on the faded photograph on the mantel, a woman in a white bonnet, smile crooked. Thatcher noticed and turned it face down. I don't ask questions, he said finally. But if you want tea, there's sage and honey. She gave a small nod and sat on the wooden chair by the fire. Her fingers, elegant but calloused, opened and closed like a rhythm from another life. He brewed the tea in silence. Steam curled like ghost light between them. When he handed her the cup, their fingers touched. Neither pulled away, but the moment passed like a flicker of candlelight. Thank you, she whispered. He only nodded. After a while he spoke again, his voice brittle. You're White Elk's daughter, ain't you? Pause. Then, was. Thatcher looked down at the floorboards as though searching for words in the grain. Thought you left these parts. Heard a governor's son offered you a ring made of mountain silver. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I've had enough of being offered things that are meant to keep me. Thunder grumbled again. Outside the rain began. She sipped the tea and stared into the fire as if trying to remember something she'd never been told. The orange light made her skin glow like carved wood. Do you ever hear your ghosts? She asked suddenly. He looked at the fire too. Sometimes, he said. But mostly they watch. Night deepened. He offered her the bed, pulling clean sheets from the chest. She didn't argue. He laid a straw mattress near the hearth for himself, folding his coat beneath his head. As the wind sang through the chinks in the walls, the cabin filled with a silence more comforting than warmth. In the dark, her voice drifted, Hawk. He thought she was talking to him, but when he turned, she was already asleep. He dreamt of a red ribbon caught on barbed wire, whipping in a dry wind. She dreamt of a black horse cresting a high ridge, its rider's hair flying like smoke. A brother's laugh echoed against canyon stone. The world in her dreams still knew her name. When morning came, it came quietly. Snow had fallen in the night, just a dusting but enough to soften the edges of things. He woke to the smell of oats and the sound of hooves. She was already outside. No coat, sleeves rolled, feeding his horses like she'd done it every morning of her life. Her breath rose in clouds as she whispered to them in her tongue. The mare, his mare, nuzzled her shoulder as if in benediction. He watched her from the window, one hand against the pane. Something stirred in him. Not desire. Not yet. Something deeper. Recognition, maybe. He pulled on his boots and joined her. She didn't greet him, just passed him the feed sack. They worked in tandem like dancers who'd once rehearsed the same song. She began to hum, a low, ancient tune that seemed to rise from the soil itself. He didn't ask what it meant. She didn't tell. Later that day they rode into town. His wagon creaked under the weight of hay in silence. She sat beside him, hair braided now back straight. The road narrowed between pines, then opened into the skeletal ribs of Hollow Junction. Folks stared. Whispers bloomed like thistles. Elsie Moore crossed herself as they passed. A child was pulled inside a doorway. At the general store, Sheriff Klein met them halfway, hat in hand, lips a firm line. Thatcher, he said slowly. Town's small. Eyes are sharp. I ain't done anything wrong, Thatcher replied. Not yet, the sheriff said. But they'll still talk like you have. The woman beside him didn't flinch. She walked into the store with him, chin lifted. Bought sewing needles and lye. Paid in silver coin. A young boy stared at her from behind a crate of apples. She bent, smiled, and handed him a carved wooden bird from her pocket. The boy giggled. The boy's mother did not. That night after supper, Thatcher stepped outside to smoke. There, on the porch, leaned against the doorframe like a warning, was a broken arrow. No note. No sound. Just the wind pressing its cold fingers along his spine. He didn't bring it inside. She saw it anyway. At the table he began to speak, rage threading his voice, but she touched his hand. Let them carry their own weight, she said. It's not yours. She told him of her tribe, how they scattered after her father's death, how her title became a name passed between politicians like a prize. She spoke of Hawk, her brother, whose bones now fed the tall grasses near Spirit Valley. I chose a simple life, she said, eyes steady. I just didn't know how hard it would be to live it. He met her gaze. My wife died birthing our son. I froze. Could have ridden to town for the doctor. Didn't. Buried them both. She didn't recoil. She placed her palm over his, not to absolve but to say, you stayed. They didn't speak of it again. That evening they mended the fence together. Her fingers moved deftly with wire. The sky blushed pink above them, the land humming with dusk. A rabbit watched from the sagebrush, unbothered. At one point their hands brushed. He pulled away first. She didn't seem to mind. In the days that followed, the rhythm of them settled like fresh snow, soft, strange, silent. Until the fire came. It started with lightning out past Widow's Bluff. They smelled it before they saw it, sharp, acrid, desperate. Smoke bloomed above the hills like a dark sun. Horses kicked against the gate. The air thickened. They didn't hesitate. They saddled the mare and rode out with pails and shovels, sweat mixing with ash. Wind howled. The fire cracked like gunfire, eating dry grass with greedy teeth. She moved through it like something born to blaze. When the flames jumped the ridge, he stumbled, lost his grip. She pulled him back. Later they stood side by side, soot blackened, watching the last embers curl. You saved her, he whispered, looking at his mare. You saved us. She leaned into him, forehead against his shoulder. I only did what you would have done. For a long time they didn't move. Then he said her name. Slowly. Like a secret returning. Isolde. It tasted like wind and rain and cedar smoke. She closed her eyes. It's the first time you've said it. It wouldn't be the last. The next morning they sat on the porch, the arrow still in its place beside the door. Sheriff Klein rode in quietly. They've started a petition, he said. Don't want her here. Say she's stirring things. Thatcher stood. I don't care. I know, Klein said. But I thought you should hear it from me. He left. Isolde didn't ask what was said. She already knew. Thatcher stared at the horizon for a long time. You can leave. Tonight. I won't stop you. She folded her arms across her chest. I stayed once. I'll stay again. Peace don't run. He looked at her, then really looked. Saw not a princess, not a symbol, but a woman shaped by wind and loss, standing taller than any of them. That night they sat by the fire again. This time closer. When their shoulders touched, he didn't move away. She reached into her satchel and drew out a feather, white as milk. Tomorrow, she said softly, we visit your wife. And he nodded. Because love does not always arrive with trumpets or vows. Sometimes it knocks quietly, soaked in rain, and waits for you to answer.